Estamos. Muy buenos días a todos, soy Catherine Boyce y me siento complacida de acompañarles como host en el segundo día de BIZ Panamá 2020, el evento anual más importante de tecnología, innovación y negocios organizado por CAPATEC y coorganizado por la Fundación Ciudad del Saber. Muchísimas gracias a todos por su participación en compañía en este día y hoy continuaremos la agenda con nuevos temas para la Keynote Conference y Fireside Chat. Estaremos cerrando el día hoy con nuestro espacio de preguntas y respuestas, ya que por motivo de fuerza mayor, el Masterclass no será presentado el día de hoy. Gracias a nuestros patrocinadores, Pro Panamá, AEI, Panamá Hub Digital, Negocios Digitales, Credit Corp Bank, NIC Panamá, Cable & Wireless y Banismo. Para dar inicio, quisiera presentar al doctor Armando Gibson, en representación del rector Héctor Montemayor de la Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá, quien estará dando algunas palabras.
Buenos días, autoridades nacionales, junta directiva, miembros y personal de CAPATEC, señores participantes. En nombre del señor rector, ingeniero Héctor Montemayor, nos complace dirigir unas breves palabras en este evento de importancia tecnológica para el desarrollo integral del país. La UTP actualmente se encuentra dentro de la transformación digital que nos está exigiendo estos nuevos tiempos. Con la aparición de la pandemia por el COVID-19, se ha tenido que adelantar todos los planes que se tenía para los próximos 3 años, para que los mismos se empezaran a implementar a partir de marzo de este año. Dentro de estos planes estaba llevar a la UTP al mundo virtual, donde se estableciera como una universidad virtual con capacidad de ofrecer carreras completas, atendiendo a estudiantes de nuestro país y de otros países con otros también idiomas. A través de nuestro laboratorio FacLab, el cual está dedicado a la investigación de la robótica aplicada, estamos apoyando al gobierno nacional construyendo ventiladores automáticos y humidificadores de alto flujo para ayudar en el combate de la pandemia dentro de la iniciativa Ventiladores por Panamá, en donde ya se ha presentado al MINSA el ventilador artificial UTP-100P. Actualmente se trabaja en un prototipo de robot para que realice operaciones de desinfección en sitios comprometidos. También estamos incursionando activamente en el área de la inteligencia artificial como un componente dentro de aplicaciones de ayuda a los ciudadanos y a nuestros propios estudiantes. Nuestros investigadores se han integrado a varias iniciativas científicas para el estudio y el combate del COVID-19, entre las que se encuentra el Comité Científico contra el COVID-19 en la región occidental de Panamá, el cual presidimos. Dentro de las convocatorias cortas hechas por CENACYT para dar respuesta al COVID-19, 9 de las 32 seleccionadas pertenecen a nuestros investigadores. Actualmente, y por 3 años consecutivos, la UTP es la única universidad a nivel nacional que se encuentra en el rango de 800 a 1000, entre las 1000 mejores universidades del mundo, según el QS World University Ranking, y ocupamos la posición 364 a escala mundial en el segmento de reputación de empleadores, confirmando que somos una universidad de clase mundial y que vamos camino a la excelencia a través del mejoramiento continuo, como reza nuestro lema. En el próximo diciembre nos someteremos a la evaluación de la Agencia Francesa de Acreditación de Universidades Europeas, HCR, para obtener un reconocimiento de nuestros planes de estudios en el continente europeo. Hemos firmado acuerdos con universidades líderes en China, como Huai University, que es la número 1 en estudios de recursos hídricos, a la cual hemos enviado aspirantes a doctorado para su especialización en el área. La UTP, como forjadora de profesionales comprometidos con la innovación y la implementación de tecnologías que permitan llevar al país a estar en el grupo de países más avanzados en el uso de la tecnología en nuestra región de América Latina, se complace en ser nuevamente patrocinadores de esta actividad, la cual será de gran beneficio para los presentes. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, doctor Gibson. Aprovecho para comentar que CAPATEC agrupa a los principales actores con el objetivo de promover e impulsar el desarrollo de la industria TIC en el país. Cabe mencionar también que este gran evento no sería posible sin la ayuda de nuestros patrocinadores y el siguiente segmento llega a nosotros gracias a NIC Panamá, patrocinador oficial de BIZ 2020.
Nuevas oportunidades de visión y desarrollo para el país nacen en 1981 con la creación de la Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá, una institución de educación superior dedicada a la formación cabal de capital humano en las áreas de ingeniería, ciencias y tecnología a nivel nacional. Hoy, la Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá es una institución que hace la diferencia, con un sello de calidad y excelencia a través de cada uno de los servicios que ofrece e impactan directamente en el crecimiento y desarrollo de nuestro país. La UTP cuenta con 6 facultades en todo el país y tiene presencia a nivel nacional a través de 7 centros regionales ubicados en Azuero, Bocas del Toro, Coclé, Colón, Panamá Oeste, Chiriquí y Veraguas. Además, cuenta con extensiones universitarias en Howard y Tocumen. Somos Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá, camino a la excelencia a través del mejoramiento continuo.
Gracias a nuestro patrocinador NIC Panamá. Ahora recibamos por favor a Raúl Andrés Romero, director de Banca Digital de NECI, quien dará algunas palabras en representación de Banismo. Muchísimas gracias, Raúl, y bueno, vamos adelante con tus palabras.
Don Raúl tiene que activar su micrófono. Si puede darle refresh a su navegador. Ok, listo, don Raúl. Vamos a activar.
¿Listo?
Perfecto, se le escucha perfectamente. Ahora su cámara.
Perfecto, perfecto, ya.
Live. Perfecto. Adelante, don Raúl.
Llevaba más o menos un minuto hablando solo. Bueno, buenos días. Buenos días a todos. Nos sentimos muy agradecidos y muy orgullosos de ser patrocinadores de BIZ. Muchas gracias a CAPATEC por la invitación. Desde Banismo y NECI estamos muy interesados en la evolución digital de Panamá, en tener una solución dada para las personas de una manera sin fricciones, muy del día a día en el mundo cotidiano, desde su celular. NECI es una representación de eso, es una plataforma banco digital, el primero en Panamá, que conecta muchos mundos y que nos pone, digamos, a la mano unas capacidades que antes no teníamos, de interactuar, de tener nuestra interacción con el dinero de una manera expedita, inmediata, sin fricciones, sin restricciones, pudiendo compartir el tiempo para otras cosas, sin filas, sin papeleos. Y acá, ese es el cambio del mundo, es la rotación, es la transformación digital en este caso, del mundo financiero, como otros sectores han sucedido. Y acá vamos hacia el futuro, tomando de la mano todos los que estamos en este escenario, interactuando en el mundo digital, en el mundo de la innovación, porque de la mano de todos vamos a tener la nueva realidad. nueva realidad que está acomodada a una condición de pandemia, pero que eso han sido aceleradores desde ese mundo digital. Y tanto Nequi como Banismo estamos en esa línea de acción, haciendo una transformación profunda a nivel digital, llevando a todos nuestros clientes y usuarios a que tengan mejores capacidades de interacción con los demás, con su mundo, con su nueva realidad. Y es así que todos debemos seguir labrando ese sentido. No solamente estamos hablando del mundo del marketing, estamos hablando de todos los procesos 360 que suceden a nivel de las organizaciones, en donde acomodarse a cada una de esas nuevas realidades es supremamente importante. Y generando pues los lazos entre cada una de las categorías cotidianas en las que cada uno interactúa en el día a día, desde comida, ropa, el mismo estudio, y ahí es donde estamos enmarcados, pero no siendo más y para no alargar tanto las palabras, nuevamente les doy las gracias por este espacio y vamos a esta gran charla del día de hoy. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias por esas palabras. A continuación vamos a presentar un pequeño video de nuestros patrocinadores Nequi y Banismo. Bueno, cosas que suceden en vivo. Tenemos algunos problemas técnicos, pero quiero aprovechar esta oportunidad para recordarles que pueden interactuar con nosotros a través del hashtag BizFitPanamá 2020 y pueden seguirnos en nuestras redes sociales @BizFitPanamá. Vamos al siguiente segmento y cabe mencionar que la verdad para mí es un honor recibir a quien presentará la Keynote Conference del día de hoy, Alex Coqueiro, director del equipo de tecnología del sector público para la TAM, Canadá y el Caribe de Amazon Web Services. Alex está enfocado en liderar un grupo técnico de arquitectos que diseña soluciones para la nube, para clientes y organizaciones gubernamentales, educativas, sanitarias y sin fines de lucro. Actualmente es responsable de mapear las capacidades de la solución de Amazon Web Services a las necesidades comerciales. Welcome, Alex, and thank you for your participation. The stage is all yours.
Thank you so much for having me here. Like, it's a really pleasure talking at this very important event. So, really glad to have the opportunity to talk more about technology and especially how you can achieve your goals using leverage technology that's available today. Sorry, not talking in Spanish, but I will do my best in English to be sure that you'll be able to understand what happens around the world and the trends about bots and robots. Let me share my presentation now. Here we are. It's interesting because when you see the title, Unlock the Power of Disruptive Customer Experience with Robots, usually people focus more in terms of robots or bots, which yes, will be the topic or the core of the presentation today. But you know what? The presentation is not about robots. Actually, the presentation is about customer experience. And that point is specifically important because, when you think about technology by itself, without thinking about customer experience, sometimes you not achieve the goals that you think you could. And to understand the idea of customer experience, I'd like to take one step back and using our experience in Amazon. And actually something that our founder, Jeff Bezos, tells us all the time about how we should see the customers. So this quote specifically was something that Jeff Bezos wrote in 2016, some time ago, in our letter to shareholders that tried to synthesize the way that we see customers in Amazon. It's interesting because let's do it together. Customers are always beautifully and wonderfully dissatisfied. And this one is sometimes like awkward for many people because yes, in Amazon, we just take for granted customers will be always dissatisfied. And you know what? The second part of that sentence helps you to understand why. Because customers always want something better. Doesn't matter how good you are and how wonderful I deliver your services. After a while, customers just raise the bar over and over again. And then you get the need like, how can I improve myself all the time? How can I have continuous improvement process to always delight our customers the best? And see, when you think that way, helps in terms of always improve your services, is exactly what I have doing in Amazon. We have a core of leadership principles, and one of those is what we call customer obsession. And the idea of customer obsession is that linked with things that I told you before about take for granted that the customers are always wants more. And one of the techniques that we use internally is what you call work backwards. So the idea of working backwards is very, very simple. It's about thinking the customer first, see their experience, and then work on everything else to be sure that that experience will be addressed properly. And I know in terms of words doesn't make much sense, but let's do it this way. Let's provide an example about how working backwards works. In that case, I will take the retail business in order to show you one example of working backwards. And not to introduce it, I'd like to introduce you Amazon Scoot. And Amazon Scoot is exactly one example of working backwards that shows how we can do better with our customers. So the idea of Amazon Scoot is bringing the products at your home. It's something that we are doing all the time. We call this process as a last mile. But the idea here is how to personalize the delivery to the customer in a way that makes much easier and much more convenient to the customer receive the products. You see, we are doing those things over and over again for years. But when you take for granted that customers are always satisfied, the idea is how can we reinvent ourselves to provide always the best using technology, leveraging technology in your benefit. Because in the end of the day, it's all about the customer experience. And the working backwards, they have some important points like who is the customer? And for me, the most important question, what's the benefit from the customer point of view? And when you take those concepts as exercise, it helps you to focus on what matters for your customer. That said, let's challenge yourself today and let's do it together as an exercise to see how it works in a real life. And here, it's a very standard and traditional use case, like you or some of your friends go to the hotel, booking a room, and then sometimes you're tired about long trips, and the only thing that you want to is just turn on your air conditioning, you want to turn on your TV, and I don't know about you, but I had experienced a couple of times. Sometimes I just want to turn on TV and find in my channel, my sports channel. And you know what? Go there and there's tons of TV channels and sometimes struggling to find the one that I want. And it's interesting because it's an experience that sometimes frustrates me, sometimes frustrates a lot of people, but people just don't realize because they take it as a normal. When actually using remote controls and doing things manually in a hotel is not that normal, because the way that you are doing things is based on what you call machine-centric interfaces. Machine-centric interface is when you have the machine and you change your behavior to work in the way that machine understands. And I think the point is, can we do better? Because it's all about delight our customers. And actually, this example, it's a real example. It's not fake. It's an example from one of our customers in Las Vegas. Is a hotel chain we call Wynn. Wynn is based in Las Vegas, very big branch. And as part of their process, they thought, can you reinvent ourselves in a way that customers go to our room? And what they challenged us in terms of project was, I don't want to have a machine-centric approach. I want to have a human-centric approach because I don't sell rooms to machines. I sell rooms to people. Is it possible to delight their experience? And what they did was a huge automation process to use voice instead of remote control. Voice in a way that provide automation for everything, like open shades, turn on the lights, or turn on the TV channel. In that case, everything automated in a way that people go and talk with the reception desk, everything into voice. That was the big change, and just raise the bar in terms of what customers' expectations are. Doing that, they had the opportunity to innovate in a different level, innovate in a way that was much more human-centric instead of being technology-centric. And when you take it as an exercise, you have different areas that you can improve your services. And here I just select 4 of them that we have seen all the time, customers telling us. For example, maybe you want to focus in terms of operational efficiency. Maybe you want to focus on customer experience by itself, like one that I just showed you now. Maybe you want to focus on innovation at scale. Or maybe you just have a process that you create a new normal, a new standard in the market. So what I'm doing now is selecting examples of each one of those categories, showing what technology we have behind to provide those goals in terms of business results. And the first one, you'll be exactly the one that customers usually focus more, which is operational efficiency. For the operational efficiency, one of the ways that you can deliver these results is using one technology we call it chatbots. So in terms of chatbots, I'm pretty sure that some of you have already heard before. It's about a very innovative way that you can provide a support to our customers using bots, or basically a way that you can have conversational interfaces, sometimes using voice, sometimes using text, but in a way that customers can have this first line of support using machine to help scale their business. Let's take one real exercise to you to see each one of these components together. And the first one, it's about booking a hotel. We talked about hotel before, from the customer experience, from user, and now let's say that the customers is trying to book some hotel. In that case, maybe they are just using the mobile phone. So nothing fancy, nothing new, but they want to use the phone in order to do this booking. So instead of having the person answer those questions back, what you have is a couple of interactions that bots are able to intercept to get this message. And the first one is what you call intents. Intent is a concept that shows what is this conversation about? What's the context? because there's no miracle. Like you just talk with the bots and things start happening. No, it doesn't work in that way. You need to define what intents, what kind of context I'm ready to work to be sure that customers will have the support that they need instead of getting frustrated. So as soon as you have the intents, the second step is the utterances. So now I know the context. I start to work in the language. What kind of questions customers will ask under this context specifically, and then how can I answer all those questions? As soon as I understand the questions going just back and forth, the next point is about slots. On slots is the areas that I need in terms of understanding data that is relevant to me to move to the next step. The next step is exactly the result that customers want. For the customer perspective, it sounds like a person, but for real life, what you have is a machine that you did all this interaction and work in the back end in the behalf of the system, on behalf of the users in a call center. I'm just apologizing because I think someone turned on. Yeah, thank you. That's better. So the chatbots in action. One example of someone who did it was the American Heart Association. And I like this one because American Heart Association is not a big or super enterprise company. Actually, is a corporation that try to make the world better. So they have a very important event from them. They call it a heart walk. So it's the idea that bring people together to deliver the message about how to think about important things in our life as a heart. And usually they have about 1 million participants. And what they realized would be super hard, especially with the budget restrictions that they have. Having a call center to support 1 million people's question. It's just about scale. It would be impossible. And what they did, so instead of hiring a lot of people, they just took a different approach to implement chatbots. The same thing that I showed you before, and the chatbots, they streamline all the registration process. So all the questions that these participants had was handled by the chatbots, provided basic questions. And you know what? When the American Heart Association started to analyze the questions, they identified that most of the questions were the same. So they start to use that feedback in order to improve the communication strategy. And this one from American Heart Society, it was just one example, but you can use chatbots for different use cases. Informational bots, for example, for asking consumer requests about updates about news, weather. You can have chatbots for contact center. In that case, have the first support in terms of basic questions that you can call to this contact center. You can have chatbots for applications like booking tickets, order food, everything that you do in a daily basis that is very straightforward, you can implement using these application bots. You can have bots for your company, more than enterprise context, like booking meetings, checking the information about forecasts, checking sales numbers, all those things that makes the productivity in terms of enterprise much faster. Or you can integrate with IoT devices that are everywhere, collect information and take actions on top of it. Let's say that you have some customers who are measuring earthquakes. These ones are wonderful to measure some trends of earthquakes and then behind the scenes work to make the place safety. This first example was in operation efficiency and works so well when customers had adopting more and more. But let's take one step further and let's implement it in a way that can really disrupt the customer experience. And for explain this session, instead of providing a lot of explanation, what I want to do is like show you how things work. So that's, in that case specifically, I'm taking one example from Dr. Ali Parsa. Dr. Ali Parsa is the Chief Executive Officer in UK and responsible for the company called as a Babylon. So the Babylon is focused on healthcare, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic situation. Scale healthcare is absolutely crucial. So in that case, what Dr. Ali Parsa did was using the same idea that we in the hotel, remember the example that I gave you before, but in a healthcare situation. So in that case, the example that you see is a customer talking with the device. In that case, the device is Alexa, our smart device that able to answer questions and interact with voice. And behind the scenes, you see something that customers doesn't see. Is the way that the computer works in terms of intelligence. So again, what customers see is only the voice, the communication that you hear, and in the background, you see everything that happens behind the scenes. Let's start to play it.
Alexa, I want to talk to Babylon.
Hi there, I'm Babylon and I'm here to help. To start, tell me what symptom is bothering you the most.
Well, I've got quite a sore stomach.
Sorry to hear that. Let's figure out what's causing your pain and how to treat it. Chris, where exactly is the pain?
It's kind of on the top part of my stomach, sort of in the middle.
And how bad is the pain?
Oh, it's not too bad.
And does it come and go?
Yeah, it comes and goes, and it's worse after eating.
I see. How would you describe the pain?
Sort of feels like a burning pain.
Okay. And are you feeling sick?
Yeah, a little bit.
Have you vomited at all?
No?
Have you noticed you're feeling fuller sooner than usual?
No.
How long have you had this pain?
A few months? 3 months, maybe?
Are you still a non-smoker?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Have you been taking any of your ibuprofen tablets the last few days?
Yeah, I have.
Thanks, Chris. I know enough now to offer information on what may be causing your symptoms. It could be acid reflux or a peptic ulcer. I'd recommend speaking to a GP soon. They're likely to prescribe something called a proton pump inhibitor to control your stomach acid. I can then get this prescription to your home using your Amazon Prime.
Okay, thanks, Babylon.
My pleasure. Thanks for using Babylon with Alexa. Goodbye.
Think about the new customer experience, because in that case, there's a lot of knowledge that was captured by Dr. Ali Parsa, and what he did was an integration between voice and chatbots, as well as all the knowledge management in their hospital system, in order to provide not all the kinds of treatments, but the basic one, the one that customers ask over and over and over again. In that case, just release time for doctors and people in the hospital to focus on what matters in terms of collect and find treatment for many, many diseases. So in that case, it was a wonderful way to scale the solution. And not surprisingly, the solution is available not in UK, it's getting faster and faster in terms of adoption, but also in other areas like Africa, where sometimes you don't have a doctor and supporting patients by distance is absolutely key. So it's exactly what Babylon has been doing, providing healthcare for all. That's the major idea. That's the power of chatbots. And let's understand with more details what happened just a couple of minutes ago. And I use again the example of the hotel to make things easier for you to understand how things work from the technology perspective. So first, the voice. and you have user talking, and as soon as you have the talking, we have technology like automatic speech recognition, which is the first block in the presentation. So the idea of automatic speech recognition is how to convert voice into text, how to understand nuances of our communication, different accents, different way to say things, and transforming all those things into text in order to make it easier to process the information. Second, is not because you are hearing people means that you're understanding what they are saying. So in that case, you have a second technology that you call as natural language understanding. This idea is with all the words that you have and you capture is all about how to provide context and how to understand exactly what's going on in that conversation. In that case, combine the words to say, now I know what the people said, and at the end of the day, what they want to have is just booking the hotel in a place, in this example, in New York City. Then you have all the communication, follow the flow that I told you before. Now, utterances, connecting information, establish a connection with your legacy, booking the system using all the infrastructure that you have now, because chatbots not just take away all the technology that you have, it's about combining in a way that makes sense for the customer experience. In that case, store data in a way that makes it easier to do some transactional operation or even analytics perspective to understand or get insights from the customer interaction. And then when you are done, you go to the last step, which is turn text into lifelike speech. Is in a way that you answer, in a way that humans answer. You see, with the interaction with Alexa in Babylon, it sounds like a human talking to you, but it's not, it's the machine. So making the voice, the sound, as close as possible to the humans is absolutely key to be sure the customer will feel comfortable having that interaction. But the question is, can you do better? Because remember what Jeff Bezos said, customers are always dissatisfied. Customers always want more. And with that perspective, let's challenge ourselves again to do better. And to do better and to be more innovative, I'd like to provide scale and having innovation at scale in a way that you just leverage what you just saw so far, but maybe going to the real life to really help customers when they need the most. In that case, I'd like to bring a different example, not from UK and Africa, but actually, I'd like to take an example from Mexico and how Mexico has been the leader in terms of innovation in Latin America. So the example that I'd like to show now is from Rumi. So Rumi has been working with the technology from Amazon in order to provide a better experience for people and for hospitals again. So in that case, let's say that we have a person in a hospital, maybe for something serious, maybe for something like okay, normal, but basically, especially now in COVID times, you need to be careful about people, you need to be careful to not transmit disease for others, and where the technology helps. So in that case, imagine a person going to the room, going to the hospital, and you have the robot.
Hola, soy Rumiebot. Estoy auxiliando en la contingencia por COVID-19. ¿Puedo medir tu temperatura?
Look, I'm not talking about United States. I'm not talking about Canada, where I live now. I'm not talking about the UK. I'm talking about Mexico. Really on the top to provide robots to help patients and then avoid any kind of disease. So in that case specifically, what the robot did was the first contact to ask basic information about the patient and actually not only ask the questions and have the communication, but actually took some actions like taking the temperature. Like temperature is key, like do you have fever, do you have not? And because those Rumi robots, they have several sensors, they are able to do the first step of triage and then redirect people for doctors, real doctors, to do whatever it takes to take the patient in the best way possible. That's the reason, that's the way that they're scaling to help or to combat the COVID-19 pandemic situation. And robots is everywhere. It's a fact. Like, it's happening faster and faster. I told you in Mexico, but have cases in other places of Latin America. We have many cases in Canada, US, Japan, and so on. But there's a statistics from IDTechX, which says that 7% of all the mobile material that goes from one place to another, will be handled by robots. It's huge by 2030. It's huge if you think about it, because sometimes if people think about robots like something that go there and do like very complex stuff. But what I'm telling you is, like, robots sometimes just using for things that there's no value for humans to do, like moving things from one place to another. Is exactly what IDTechX is saying, like this new trend that's happening in terms of adoption. And the key part for that is the new technology that's available. And I know that in the past, developing a robot was quite complex and requires a lot of money. So in that case, what you have here is some open sources that actually, these open sources not from Amazon, these open sources are available to the market for anyone in this call to use, that you call as a ROS. So ROS is a robotics middleware that makes the robotic technology popular for everything to develop. You don't need to pay thousands of dollars in licenses in terms of robotics middleware. You just go there and download and do your automation using whatever idea you have, and maybe find some sponsor to work with you in terms of hardware. And then for the hardware, implement robots for the real life. So the idea of ROS, I just published the link here, wiki.ros.org, that you can get more information. And that technology specifically, like Alexa, from the voice perspective, is changing the way that the industry is doing, making things much cheaper to do so. So think about that, and think about Amazon. The way that we are helping is providing capabilities for all the stages. Like, first, develop environment. How you can code, and you can create the logic about how to understand what the voice said, and then take actions. Or how can I make my robot going faster or slower? You also can take in consideration integration with other services, integration with legacy. Because the idea of robots is not working by itself, but the idea is using robot as a hub to integrate with all the legacy systems that you have. Simulations, and sometimes people spend thousands of dollars in terms of hardware, and sometimes it doesn't work. So in order to simulate all the real environment, simulation is absolutely key. In a simulation environment that you can provide things like, I want to see my robot working in a rainy day. I want to see my robot working in the dark. Or I want to see my robot working in a place that has a lot of trees. So all those different environments, you can provide a simulation to see the behavior of your robot before deploy it in a production. Those things, it's like changing the industry upside down, because basically they are able to test much more. I've seen a lot of schools and universities using simulations to teach kids about how can robots work in different ways, because now all those things are available for anyone. And finally, fleet management, because more robots you have, more you have. So having a mechanism to manage the fleet is absolutely crucial, because we have hackers everywhere, and you want to be sure that your robot platform, you have all the security that you need to guarantee robustness of the solution. And when you think about robots, don't think about the robot that I talk about, Rumi. Think about different ways that you have robots, like NASA working with us in terms of providing robots for International Space Station, or drones, something that we're using a lot here in Amazon, robotic arms in terms of distributions, water, like dive to find fish or find problems in nature to help our planet, self-driving vehicles, probably the most famous one, education, teaching kids and teaching students how to use the technology to save the world. The possibilities are endless. And with all those possibilities, I'd like to go to the last example, which is like all those three technologies or all those three areas: operational efficiency, customer experience, and innovation. They are just being together because now this one becomes a new normal. And to show it, I'd like to provide one example about when people and robots are just working together. And this example is from Leah. From Leah, I will just turn off my camera because now it's all about the Leah and EU. Turn on my camera again. You see? Oops, slides. It's robot helping people. It's not about dominating the world. It's about helping people, like elderly people that's getting bigger and bigger, that population, to help people having better life. And my final words today is about let builders build, because there's endless possibilities. And as you could see today with this couple of examples, those things really change the experience, change the experience in a disruptive way, creating a better world to live. I'm part of the AWS team that's about cloud computing. In all the examples that I showed today, what they have in common, they use cloud as a mechanism, as a platform to redeploy the project in a scalable way, make the world a better place to live. That said, thank you so much for the opportunity. My Twitter here is AlexBCBR. If you are interested, just follow me and I provide more and more information about all amazing things that are happening in the world right now. Thanks so much.
Alex, thank you so much for this presentation. With no doubts, we're going to apply everything we learned today. Y a continuación vamos a presentar un pequeño video de nuestros patrocinadores, Neki y Banismo. Recibimos ahora a Manuel Lorenzo, moderador de nuestro Fireside Chat, Chatbots for Customers Experience.
Muchas gracias a todos. Para mí es un honor, como siempre, estar compartiendo con BIZ, una organización que conozco desde su nacimiento, la vi nacer, y la verdad es que me da mucho gusto poder compartir este Fireside Chat después de la conferencia que acabamos de escuchar con toda esta gente, con todos estos participantes dilectos que sé que disfrutarán de esta conversación. Hoy en el día, hoy voy a conversar con Alex, con quien compartimos la conferencia anterior, y voy a tener que cambiar al idioma inglés para poder conversar con él. Alex, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, a pleasure from my side as well.
Alex, I heard your very interesting conference about bots and customer experience. You know, many companies are thinking about, starting using chatbots and bots to automate interactions with customers and even to automatize internal processes. But many people are asking what kind of skills and capabilities and knowledge are necessary for people to develop chatbots, especially the chatbots or the bots that interact with customers to create a better customer experience.
Super. Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing sounds basic, but it's critically important, is understand your business. Because those chatbots, not about technology by itself. It's all about how we are interacting in terms of creating that experience. Understand your customers, understand their profile and their needs is absolutely key to deliver what they are expecting. I think the second part is about finding a platform. Because yes, there's a lot of technology outside, but if you try to reinvent the wheel, it will be hard because there's so many moving parts happening at the same time and just adding complexity in your process. So working the platform, using cloud platform to really remove algae and differentiate heavy lifting, it's absolutely key. And the last one is about being writing obsessed. When I say writing obsessed, you see that most of the communication are based in human interaction. And then having that understanding, sometimes bringing people who understands language and communication, it's absolutely key because we understand how humans act and then working backwards to take an approach about human-centric. You mentioned about capabilities. Like when you think about capabilities, there's several. Some of those I told today, but think about using natural language processing. It's really key to understand the context that people are talking about. Sentiment analysis. I didn't mention today about sentiment analysis, but I'd like to highlight now because sometimes people are just furious or angry or sad. So understanding those things is totally possible by the voice, by the tone that I'm saying things to you, and capture those things is critically important to provide a better experience and to provide a better message. Analytic support, because when you think about chatbots is the interface. Doesn't matter if your interface is a mobile phone or your interface is a robot, but it's an interface. So collecting that information and have an analytics platform behind to help you to create some insights is absolutely key. I see in terms of skills, like find your platform, know your business, and focus on the writing, plus natural language processing, sentiment analysis, and analytics are the key for the success on the chatbots implementation.
Excellent. Very interesting. You know, as we all know, customer experience is all about emotions and getting to know the voice of the customer in order to create a better customer experience is the whole key of everything, you know. How can you explain us how do chatbots help us get that voice of the customer in terms of understanding their emotions? You already said something about it, to create a better customer experience.
Absolutely. So when you have the voice, there's some patterns in terms of the voice and the tone of the voice. And the benefit of having the platform behind is you can use some technology like machine learning that you can ingest tons of data about tons of example of voices that people were sad, the people were happy, and by all those data, the machine learning can learn those behaviors and those patterns in a way that when the next voice comes, they have some standards in terms of the tone, in terms of how strong some specific parts of the conversation were or not, because understand about mathematical models, these patterns of those voices. So basically, as soon as we ingest all the information, the machine will start to learn the patterns of human people voice, and then you can apply for your context. So machine learning is key for understanding those patterns.
Great. And what do you think about, you know, the role of chatbots in order to enhance customer journeys? Mm-hmm. What's your opinion about, you know, changing human interactions by chatbots, specifically its role in creating better interactions?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because sometimes people get fear about, hey, chatbots, you take my job and I won't have any position in the market. And actually, it's not true at all. I just take the example that I presented for about American Heart Society. So yes, most of the interactions were dealing with chatbots, but there's a lot of exceptions because humans sometimes are unpredictable, that they have human behind. So instead of have an army of people there, that probably will not be feasible because we talk about more than 1 million people. We have people that take actions when the machine is not able to learn or take those actions. So the way that you have seen chatbots in a successful implementation is the cooperation between humans and chatbots in a way that creates a flow that makes no difference from the people or for the customer who has been using it. What you believe is both should work together. If you just try to provide 100% of automation with chatbots, you have a high chance of failure.
Great. So it's all about creating, you know, making the flow goes better. You know, the flow and the journey of the customer gets better as there is cooperation between humans and bots in the interaction with the customers, right?
Exactly. It's exactly how it works. Because things that are critical for customer, consistency in terms of interaction, like customer really want to have the best information possible available at that moment. And this consistency is something that chatbots is helping like a lot.
Great. And how do you think, you know, product-centric companies can make the transformation or transform themselves into customer-centric companies using bots.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. I think it's more the technology by itself. For me, it's a matter of leadership principles. You see the way that I start this technology presentation with a quote from Jeff Bezos that was about put customer at the center of your perspective. And actually, to do it, you don't need to use like the last technology version available in the market. It's more about behavior. It's more about leadership principles that helps your customer going in the right direction. That said, I have some examples. And again, not using examples from North America and Europe. I like examples from Latin America because it's our reality. So the first one from government. And I use government because people sometimes blame government that they are not being agile, but we have several exceptions for this rule. And one of those in Mexico, again, about INE. INE is the institution for elections. So what they have done is like you work in a very traditional process, like people go and cast their vote, and they need to count all the votes to define who won. And the last election for the president's election, what INE did was like, I don't want to do things like I did in the last 50 years. I really want to provide automation, focus on people and focus on the way that people will see the results, provide the transparency, because democracy matters. And they just reinvent themselves in order to think, or we think about the elections experience from the customer perspective, providing automation for most of the files, providing broadcasting updates by second for all the international institutions in a real time. Was a big change. And maybe most of the people didn't see it, but in terms of internal improvement was huge because they were able to have elections in a perfect way. My second example from Mexico going to Colombia. An example from ICFES. ICFES is responsible for education in Colombia. They work in entire country, and under the COVID situation, one of the challenges was how can I take tests without having students cheating? Yeah, most of them doesn't cheat, but some of them sometimes they want to get higher grades, and now I cannot ask the student to go to the room to take those tests. So what the ICFES did, they implemented what we call a virtual proctoring. So using machine learning and visual recognition to understand the student and see, hey, who you are. For sure, you are the person that you are telling me that you are, and providing an environment, a safe environment for all the students in Colombia to take those tests. And the last example is about Kedu. This one in Brazil, actually. They, again, about education, what they created was a data lake to organize all the information from all the schools and universities. In that case, was about providing insights to the government about how can improve the education in a country. You see, all the examples, not about technology, but all about how we review what they have in order to really provide services instead of products.
I think Amazon itself is a good example as well. You know, all of us, you know, you use Amazon, and every day is a better experience than the previous day. And it is all about, you know, learning about what I want and what we want from Amazon. And, you know, it takes it to you.
Yep. I could agree more. Like Prime is a great example.
Yes.
I had Prime Day yesterday and today. But I remember, like, when you have the first discussion about delivering products in 24 hours, some of people inside Amazon saying it's impossible. 24 hours, it's absolutely impossible, it's insane. But then going deep and use the same idea that I showed today, we just make it through. And now, it's not the new standard is not 24 hours. The new standard is 2 hours now. So obviously, we are learning from the international experience. I know the way that operates in US is a little bit different than the way they operate internationally, but we are learning from our mistakes. We are learning from our experience, always to delight customers. And more important, what we are doing now, it's my responsibility as a director of my division, is how to take those experiences and help customers to do the same. I don't want to have Amazon as the only company doing it. We took the advantage of having others like this one to teach others how we're doing in the end of the day to make the world a better place to live.
Alex, it's been a pleasure to have you with us. I think it was an interesting conference. So thank you very much. And thank you, BIZ for giving us the opportunity to talk about customer experience in chatbots. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a really pleasure talking to you.
Muchas gracias, Alex y Manuel, por hacer este Fireside Chat tan interesante y lleno de conocimiento. Sin duda alguna, los chatbots llegaron para conectar más a las empresas con sus clientes. Ahora vamos a abrir espacio a nuestro segmento de preguntas y respuestas, pero antes vamos a pasar un pequeño video de nuestros patrocinadores, Neki y Banismo. Ahora sí abrimos el espacio de preguntas y respuestas con el público general. Estábamos tratando de capturarlas porque, como saben, pues estamos en vivo, estamos en directo. Y la primera pregunta es, with the growth of robotics, how do you see the impact in labor and employment? Alex.
Sure. I think what I've seen now is a shifting in terms of skills. So like any other time in our history, like remember before you have horses, from horse you have cars, from cars you have industries, then computers and now robots. What the opportunity now is how people are shifting their skills, changing skills to really provide the best in the customer experience. So people are changing, the world is changing, and it's critical to understand those trends and see how we can refresh ourselves to provide a better value. Is exactly what's happening now in all the parts of the world.
Thank you, Alex. The next question is, how do we prepare for our future with robots?
Super. I think the first one is understanding that new skills are coming and the new approaches are absolutely key to understand what's happening. I'm not sure if you remember a part of the presentation when the fireside.
Yes.
Fireside, when I talk about writing. You see, like, sometimes you think a lot about technology, but actually writing is as important as technology by itself, in order to capture things as human. Before, maybe writing was a skill only for books, but now we can see this skill to implement robots because communication is absolutely key. New will come, and people should be ready for those things.
Thank you so much, Alex. Solo nos queda invitarles al público general a que nos acompañen el día de mañana en nuestro gran cierre, ya que tendremos una agenda interesante, llena de temas innovadores para seguir potenciando el ecosistema de tecnología, innovación y negocios. No olviden que pueden interactuar con nosotros a través de nuestras redes sociales, en la cuenta de BIZ Panamá y por medio del hashtag BIZ Panamá 2020. Los esperamos el día de mañana. Yo soy Catherine Boyce y para mí fue un honor servirles el día de hoy. Hasta pronto.